welcome back to Hermanas Unfiltered. If you are new here, I am Casey and I am one of your hosts. I'm a seventh grade English language arts teacher. I'm a mom of five beautiful, wonderful boys, and I'm just trying to survive middle school drama from both sides of the desk.
Amen. Hey, y'all. My name is Isela. I am a middle school counselor, a mom of three, and always ready to dive into this deep, real life conversations that impact our kids and our families.
Today, we are going to talk about a very crucial topic: bullying. What is it? How do we, as educators and parents, respond? And most importantly, how can we work together to prevent it? Because let's be
Mm-hmm.
real, this isn't just a school problem, it's a community problem.
Yes. So grab your coffee, grab your wine or your sparkling water, and let's get into it.
All right, so let's start with a solid foundation. What exactly is bullying? Because I feel like we throw that word around a lot, and not
Mm-hmm.
everything is bullying, to be honest.
Yes, that word gets thrown around like candy nowadays. So, according to the CDC and most school districts, bullying is defined as a repeated, aggressive behavior that is intentional and involves an imbalance of power. So, what that means is not just a one time rude comment or disagreement, right? There has to be a pattern for it to be considered bullying.
Right. So we're talking about, and I think the important word here is repeated, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's repeated name calling, exclusion, physical intimidation, or spreading rumors, cyberbullying. I mean, anything where one child is trying to control or harm another child in a repeated manner, I feel like is considered bullying.
Right. So, let me give you an example. An elementary school teacher that she happened to walk into the office and there was a kid sitting in the office and this kid was crying and she happened to ask, "Hey, what's wrong with this kid?" And that somebody in the office said, "Oh, he was being bullied in the bus this morning." And they're like, "Oh, what happened? What was the situation?" And the response was, somebody stuck their tongue out at them.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So,
yeah.
that's mind-boggling. That's not bullying. No. If somebody makes a bad face at your kid or if they're sticking out their tongue, things like that, that's not bullying. But
I
kids
agree.
nowadays, they use the word bullying. They just throw it out there like candy. Everything that they do to each other, they consider it bullying. So it's not. Like you said, it has to be a repeated act in a
Mm-hmm.
period of time. So,
Exactly.
let's be real. Kids can be really mean, especially in middle school. But there's a big difference between being mean and being a bully.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding the difference is huge for parents and schools.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that definitely schools should effectively communicate with students, at the beginning of the year. What is bullying? What is considered bullying? Um, and what the procedures are, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's break down how schools typically respond to bullying, because as a teacher, I see the challenges from the inside, and Isela, you get the counseling side of it.
Yes. So, from my understanding, in most schools, when a student or a parent reports bullying, usually there's an investigation. So we look at evidence, talk to witnesses, and determine if it meets the criteria for bullying, right? You don't just
Yeah.
take somebody's word for it. And a lot of times situations become a he said she said problem and there is no way to prove that something is actually happening. So like I said, you report it, you launch an investigation, you look at evidence, pull all the kids that were present when certain act happened, and then from there you determine if it's bullying or not. How do you guys do it?
I think we it's the same thing. I think it's important for parents to understand that there's a chain of command, right? It all
Mm-hmm.
begins with the student reporting. If the student does not report the incident, then there is no way for the adults to know. So I think first and foremost, it is either them reporting to a teacher, and then if they report to me, then I send them to the counselor. The counselor will then talk to them and then open up an investigation. And then that's when exactly they start pulling in students who were involved or maybe who had witnessed the event. And then they determine whether it is in fact bullying or not. And then they decide the consequences of what's going to happen. But yeah, there's definitely a chain of command that needs to be followed. And I definitely don't think that all parents maybe know exactly how it works. So I'm glad that we're doing this so that we're able to communicate with parents what the procedures are.
Right. I feel like it's so easy for parents to always say, "Well, how come the teacher didn't do anything or how come your teacher didn't know?"
Yeah.
You have to realize that you are responsible for up to 30 kids in your classroom sometimes. And you cannot be involved in every single situation with 30 kids in the classroom. And then think about it. A lot of times these kids are not going to bully each other in front of their teacher.
No, like they're not
They're
going to
gonna
do
do
it
it
in
in
front
the
of us.
hallways. Yeah, they're gonna do it in the hallways during passing period. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do it in the restroom. They're gonna do it during lunch. They're not gonna do it in front of adults. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important for parents to understand that, teachers are humans. You cannot be aware of everything that is happening in your classroom um, when you have 30 kids present. And like you said, there is a chain of command. It cannot just be um, you report it and then right away something's happens.
Yeah.
I know for us, we don't report bullying to the counselor. They don't come to us with problems. I mean, sometimes they will, and then we'll take it to the assistant principals. But
Mm-hmm.
we have an assigned office where kids go and make reports. It's like filing a police report. You walk in, you say, I need to report something. They give you a sheet of paper. You explain everything that happens. You go into as many details as you can. And then from there, it's doing it again. From there, the assistant principals launch an investigation and then, determining on what is happening, then that's how we go about resolving the issue.
There are usually interventions like disciplinary actions for the bullies in some cases. And there's also, aid for the victim, whether that's, support or some type of mediation. But of course, schools can only do so much. And if the parents aren't involved, then there's probably little to not much going to be happening when it comes to either the disciplinary part or maybe aiding the victim.
Yeah, I think it's a huge issue when parents are not involved.
Mhm.
Um, because think about it, I think most people don't realize how limited schools are when it comes to taking action
Yeah.
against any situation. Um, I feel like a lot of parents expect schools to just kick out the bully, but
Mhm.
legally you can't do
Yeah.
that. There is so
Mm.
many strict policies in place that prevent a long-term suspension or expulsions.
Mhm.
I think that the only way that kids get either kicked out or suspended is if there is like a repeated or severe physical harm involved. But
Yeah.
other than that, if it's like taunting and things like that,
Mhm.
there's no chance that kid is going to get kicked out or suspended for more than, I don't know, 10 days.
Yeah.
um I know what we do a lot when we have problems with two kids in a classroom, they get
Mhm.
separated, so they get a schedule
Mhm.
change to prevent them from picking more and more. But
Yeah.
other than that, I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that as a parent, you have to be involved. You have to um And what I mean by involved, not, obviously you want to talk to the school and find out what's going on. But yeah, I think definitely separating the two individuals from interacting is probably the best way to reduce the bullying. And then I think as a parent, then you want to ask yourself, if your child is being bullied, what can I do as a parent to help my child, right? How can I
Mhm.
support my child at home? Whether it's um, maybe reading books about bullying or perhaps putting your child in counseling. Um, the school will offer counseling, but then you also have child psychologists that specialize in like trauma and bullying that may also benefit and aid your child if, especially if they're you're seeing signs of like their health kind of diminishing, and maybe they're just
Mhm.
not as happy as they used to be. That's definitely something that I would consider for my own child.
Yeah.
Most districts are going to follow a tiered discipline approach, meaning that students might start with a warning, and then if the behavior continues, they may acquire detention. And if that continues, then they start looking at suspension. But due to federal laws like the IDEA law, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, if a
Mhm.
child has a disability, they often can't be expelled or suspended for more than 10 days without a formal hearing.
Yeah. And that entails a lot. Because
Yeah.
it's not only your child's with special need, if you have an
Mhm.
IEP, if you have a 504, if you have
Mhm.
any type of accommodations, they cannot just suspend the kid. If it's going to be more than 10 days, you have to hold another meeting, and then you have to look at all the paperwork and see. And the reason why they do this is because when you suspend a child or you send them to like an alternative center, they're going to be without accommodations
Yeah.
for that amount of time. So legally, they have to have accommodations at all times, right? So it's a huge deal. And I don't think people understand it that if you have, like I said, any type of accommodations, they cannot just kick a kid out. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think like even beyond that, there is also a lot of parent pushback. Think about it.
Hmm.
So, how often, I know me as a parent, I know how my kids
Mhm.
are, but how often do you tend to believe your kids more than you believe somebody else's side of the story, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to believe our kids, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We want to believe our kids because that's our job. We
Yeah.
want to believe them and we want to support them. But
Mhm.
sometimes parents, we refuse to believe that our child is a bully.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when it comes to suspending a child or kicking them out, you do get threatened with legal action. And then, you're stuck in between a rock and a hard place.
Mhm.
So I think that definitely the lack of accountability makes it hard for schools to enforce meaningful consequences.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then of course there's the issue of like social media bullying, which is a pretty
Mm-hmm.
big thing. And kids are sneaky about it. They're so sneaky about it. Most of the times, cyberbullying going on is gonna be happening after school hours, during after school hours. So it
Mm-hmm.
makes it even harder for schools to step in and do something about it, or to even know that it's happening. Schools can only address bullying that is directly impacting the child's learning environment. So, what do you do when that bullying starts affecting the home life or happens during after school hours?
Yeah, so I think that if you as a parent want actual change, you have to work with the schools. You cannot be against them. So we need to hold every single kid accountable,
Mm.
both the ones that are being bullied and the ones that are doing the bullying. It's not just a school issue, it's a family issue too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, a lot of the times, like on social media, right, when there's any type of like bullying or anything going on in school, right, you always have your people that are always like, oh, it's so and so fault. And it's the teacher's fault. It's the counselor's fault. It's, the district's fault. And a lot of the times, like we fail to look at our responsibilities as parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you've said before, it's really hard sometimes for parents to see their child as the aggressor. um, but I think we definitely need to kind of step aside and look at the big picture, right? What can I as a parent contribute, or how can I help the situation uh, become a better situation, right? And it starts with parent involvement. It starts with communication. It starts with really understanding the situation. Why is this happening? Why is, you know whether it's my child being bullied or my child bullying somebody else, like what's the what's the big picture here? Why is it happening and how can we nip it in the bud? Because I definitely agree. So yeah, we definitely need to hold everybody accountable. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and then what I hear a lot too as well, people saying teach your kids better. Teach your kids to be kind, teach your kids to do this, teach your kids to do that. But you also have to remember that I know my kids are like this. I have a different kid at home than I do at school.
Yeah.
They are two completely different people. And I have no
Mhm.
control over what my kids are doing while they're at school because I'm not there with them. If I was
Yeah.
there with them, hell yeah, I would be all over their asses all the time. But I'm
Yeah.
not. So I trust them to do the right thing while they're away from me. So I think what helps is just having open communication with your kids. And I know it's so hard to say that. And I know that
Mhm.
kids get to a certain age and they don't want to talk to you anymore. But
Yeah.
you have to keep trying and you
Yeah.
cannot give up on it because you have to be able to have your kids come tell you if there's something happening, if somebody's
Mhm.
bothering them, or if they're doing something to other kids. Like, you have to be realistic and understand that your kid that you have at home with you is not the same kid that goes to school every day.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, they are two totally different people.
Yeah.
And then another thing, you mentioned cyberbullying. You know, when stuff like that happens at home,
Mhm.
they bring that to school as well. All that
Yeah.
drama that they have going on, like on Snapchat and things like that while they're at home, they bring that to school. And it just creates more problems at school as well. So I think a great way to prevent that is, and I hate to say this, but don't allow your kids to have social media.
Yeah.
And if you're going to allow your kids to have social media, you have to be very aware of what they have going on there. Because kids are sneaky. And they'll create two accounts for Instagram and they'll friend you on one, but then post other sneaky stuff on the other one. Same thing with
Mhm.
Snapchat. They'll block you from seeing their story. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think at this point, my son is 13 and he still has no social media. He doesn't have Snapchat, TikTok, nothing. And I'm
Yeah.
going to try to keep it like that until he's at least, I don't know, a freshman in high school. And I know that's
Yeah.
harsh,
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
but this is my way of helping
Mhm.
him, of protecting him and helping him not get in trouble and in situations that he's going to be in trouble. So, I don't know. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I think there's no one size fits all. I think you do what you have to do for you, for your family, right? That may work for you.
Mhm.
And it may not work for somebody else. Like
Yeah.
my older kids, my two oldest, they have social media. They have Snap and they have Instagram and they have TikTok. And I'm okay with it. They tag me on a lot of stuff. I'm friends with
Mhm.
them on some of the stuff, but we do live in a smaller community
Mhm.
where I know all the kids. So
Yeah.
like I know them all. I know who so and so is. I pretty much hear all the tea at school. So I know what's going on. So I'm in a very different position than you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
where your kid's going to a school with hundreds and hundreds of kiddos that you don't know all the
Mhm.
students. You don't know all the kids. You don't know the ins and outs of what's going on. So I can definitely see why keeping them from social media, the longer, the better. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
All right, so let's flip the script a little bit and let's talk about how do we as parents prevent our own kids from becoming bullies, right? Because nobody wants to admit it, but sometimes our kids are the problem.
Mhm. Yep. I think the number one thing is modeling behavior. Okay, so we all know this. Kids will mirror what they see at home. If you, as an adult, gossip in front of them, you are aggressive, you are constantly putting other people down, they are going to learn that from you and they are going to act the same way at school.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the one word that comes to mind is accountability, right? Some parents get defensive when the school calls about their kid and maybe, they're being told that their child is bullying. But instead of getting angry, why not have an open conversation with your child, right? and the school to correct the behavior. And maybe there's something going on that you may not be aware of.
Yeah. And then, like I said before, I think a big one is also teaching your kids empathy. That is a huge thing. Understand that everybody's got different stuff going on, and, understanding how other people are feeling
Mm-hmm.
can definitely create less of a problem when it comes to bullying.
Yeah, I agree. I think we as parents, we model so much, right? Even when we think that they're not watching us, our kiddos are
Mm-hmm.
watching us, right? They
They're
they
always
s-
watching.
yes, they see how we handle pain, they see how we handle excitement, they see how we handle anger, and in that we are teaching them how to deal with their emotions, right? And some of us as adults maybe never got emotionally intelligent. So then it's up to us to change our behavior so that we don't um, continue that behavior throughout, right? So, yeah, definitely. I think we need to hold ourselves accountable. And if we need to make changes, then we do that for our children.
Yeah, break the pattern.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. So, how do we build a better partnership between parents and school? Because sometimes it feels like it's always a blame game and it's always like, it's the parents' fault, it's the school's fault, and nothing really gets done.
So I feel like one of the best ways is to communicate. If your child tells you something happened at school, talk to their teacher or their counselor before making assumptions. Like I said, we are so quick to jump the gun. And
Mm-hmm.
I know if my daughter comes home and tells me something, of course I'm going to believe her first. But like I said, I know that she is a totally different person at school than she is here. So I'm going to investigate. I'm going to call a teacher. If I can't get a hold of the teacher, then I'll call the school and leave a message for somebody to call me back. We need to stop reacting with our emotions first and
Mm-hmm.
stop making assumptions and contact the school, because more than likely the schools want to help, and they need accurate information, because there's always two sides of the story, so you need to have everything before you jump into conclusions.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think on the school side, we need to be transparent with parents. And if
Mm-hmm.
bullying is happening, we need to be proactive in addressing and be proactive in maybe acquiring resources. I know our district just got I think they got a $1 million grant.
Wow.
Yeah, and this goes towards mental health.
Mm.
So, I know with that, I believe that they acquired like an LPC. So we now have an LPC that covers our three schools. And then they're also doing like this, I guess it's this online thing where the kids will check in and tell you how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
So they do it once a week or anytime. There's time available, like in between classes or during their homeroom, and they can go in there and they can tell you like how they feel, how their emotions are feeling, how their day was, and it'll ask them like different questions, like how was your day today, and then they'll click like good, bad, or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a spot for them to even give like an explanation if they're having a bad day, which I think that's important, especially if maybe you have a student who is acting a little different than normal, and
Yeah.
then you can go in there, you can check to see, oh, how was their check-in today, was it good, was it bad, and then that can give you a little bit more feedback. And I think that's a great tool to catching maybe kids that are being bullied, right, who aren't having the best experience in school and maybe they're too afraid to say anything. um, I think it's a great way to catch those kids who may like slip through the cracks.
So who does this information go to? The teacher, the counselor?
Both. Both the
Both.
teacher,
Okay.
the counselor, and the administrator.
Wow.
So I'm
That's
able,
interesting.
right? Yeah, it's really cool. So I'm able to see all the kids in my grade level, and
Mm-hmm.
then our counselor and our administrator are able to see everyone.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful, because think about it. Kids sometimes don't want to come to you when they're having problems.
Mhm.
because they're afraid of retaliation, or they're afraid that it's going to make the problem worse. Like, I know I've seen a lot of kids that they'll tell their parents, and then the parents comes to the school and they're so
Mhm.
embarrassed and they're like, no mom, don't say anything. And like I said, because they're afraid of retaliation or they're
Yeah.
embarrassed. So but if you do it like that, I mean, it's not anonymous per se, but
Mhm.
they're still able to express themselves without having to say it out loud.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. So did you get to see bullying in the
Mhm.
classroom?
Mhm.
How have you handled it? Have you had a situation?
I have not. I have not personally experienced any bullying. I've had like when kids are being silly
Mm-hmm.
and they'll say like silly things to each other. But even that, I don't allow it in the classroom. Like I nip it in the butt immediately. And I'm like, you guys are not allowed to speak to each other. You go to this side, you go to that side. And if the behavior continues, then it goes straight to my counselor. My counselor will then take care of it and do an investigation and whatnot. But I've never been in a position where I've seen like actual like harassment of a child.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. I mean, same thing as you, like, calling each other silly names or making fun of each other for
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
Um, but it was the same when I was in the classroom. Just cut it off right away. And then there were situations where I had to contact parents, like right then and there, when a kid constantly kept like,
Mhm.
um, saying certain things or like calling a kid a certain name. I would pull them out in
Mhm.
the hall and be like, okay, call your parents. And I would talk to the parent right there with the child present.
Mhm.
Um, and usually that took care of it. Because like I said, parents like it when you communicate with them,
Mhm.
just like we like it when parents communicate with us. So if you are proactive and take care of it right then and there and say something, more than
Yeah,
likely parents are going to appreciate you for taking care of it right away, instead of letting it build up into something that becomes bigger in the future. So
I agree.
um yeah, I'm a strong believer that parents and schools should be allies, not enemies. So when you work together, you can actually make a difference.
Yeah. Yep, and I and it does. Like it takes the parents working with the schools working with the parents. Um you're right. We're not enemies, you know. Me as an educator, I'm there to help your child. I'm there to protect your child. I want your child to feel safe at all times, at all moments. Um, but yeah, and I think if I were to see something um, such as that, I think that would be immediate. Like you're going to the office, like no ifs, ands, or buts. Like I would not tolerate any disrespect of any child in any form or way. Um, and I think another thing that we as parents really need to teach our children is to stand up for themselves and report it. You know,
Mhm.
if you know my child were to ever be in a situation like that, I would hope that they would, be brave enough to report it. And I understand like the retaliation. Like I get that some kids are super scared of that, but I think
Mhm.
as parents, like we need to teach them like you're not doing anything wrong. Like this is not your fault. Um, and because of that, you should want to report it even more. And then we deal with the consequences. Um, It's like when kids get upset because they get in trouble for something they did. You know what I mean? Like that's one of my
Mhm.
biggest pet peeves. It's like, dude, you did the crime, you know, pay the time. That's just
Yeah.
how it is. And I feel it's the same way. Like, don't be afraid to report that bully for something that they're doing to you. Like that's on them, you know? And I think it's important that we as parents that we teach that to our children, like stand up for yourself. And yeah, and maybe it's not in the sense that, a lot of parents are like, if they keep messing with you, beat them up. But I in no way, means, shape, or form do I think that's the correct way. Go tell an adult and settle it, stand up for yourself, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that also, and I think like you said, we got to teach our kids how to communicate. They
Mm-hmm.
have to be confident enough to say something. If something
Mm-hmm.
is happening, they have to be able to report it, whether it's to you at school, anybody, their friends. They have to be able to communicate if something isn't bothering them. And then
Yeah.
another thing is, like you said, teach them to stand up for themselves. I mean, I know it's easier said than done,
Mhm.
because you don't know specific. This kid could be
Yeah.
bigger than them, could be stronger
Yeah.
than them. So then they're afraid to stand up for themselves. But it doesn't have to be in an aggressive manner. It can
Yeah.
easily be like, let's say if a kid is making fun of you for something, you
Mhm.
know, I tell my kids sometimes, if they say something, then come back with a thank you, or, oh, your shoes are nice. Like, more than likely, if somebody is talking shit to you and you come back with something nice, it's gonna throw
Mhm.
them off their game,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna know what to say. So instead of you egging on the situation by trying to defend yourself but also talking smack,
Mhm.
turn it around and say something nice, or just walk
Yeah.
away. And again, I know
Yeah.
it's easier said than done, but
Yeah.
what I always tell kids when they come to me and somebody's bothering them or whatnot, or like,
Mhm.
I mean, not a bullying situation, but like somebody saying something to them, I
Mhm.
always say, this is not about you.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with you. This kid is being a jerk because this is what this kid is, a jerk. And it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So, we gotta be able, us as
Yeah.
parents, to talk to our
Yeah.
kids and make them confident enough to either stand up for themselves or say something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that starts at home, right? It starts with
Mm-hmm.
the communication, and it starts with you talking to your children. Um I know that we don't do it all the time, but we definitely, every once in a while we'll sit in the couch and my husband has, like, we've gone over scenarios like, what if you do if this happens, or what if you do this happens. And sometimes it's about bullying, and sometimes it's about other things. But I definitely think that it's important that you guys talk about these situations with your kids, because you never know when they're going to be in these positions. And I think another thing that I'm very that I've told my kids many times is, if you see someone being bullied, stand up
Say
for them.
something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You
That's a
got to
big
stand
one.
up for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope that my kids, take that to heart. And if they see it, I hope they truly stand up for that individual, because I've heard that when you stand up for another child that maybe doesn't have a voice, um they are less likely to feel alone. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times, like, these kiddos do feel alone. They feel like,
Yeah.
they're on their own and nobody cares about them. And I think it's important for people to stand up for them as well.
Yeah. I think so too. It's a big help. You know what else I think may work? I don't know. I'm kind of iffy about this one. How often do you roast your own kids?
My husband does it all the time.
Yeah.
And they roast me.
Yeah, right? So,
I don't
I don't
always have those.
know. Yeah, my kids can my daughter, she can roast me very well. She doesn't do it very much, but she definitely has the ability to do it. And, we roast each other all the time. So, I feel like I know my kids understand that we don't do it with malice, but I think it's also teaching them resilience
Yes.
and how to have quick comebacks in situations where they are being roasted. So, I don't know. I think that definitely helps as well. Roast your kids,
Hmm. Yeah.
and don't do it in a mean way. Of course, you're not
Hmm.
bullying your own kids. But
Yeah.
like I said, I think that it teaches them resilience, because
Yeah.
they get witty and they have comebacks and they're able to defend themselves if they ever find themselves in those situations.
Yeah.
So, I don't
And they're
know.
able to
That's
laugh it
just me.
off. No, I think,
Yes.
yeah, it's important, because because sometimes kids are just being silly. And I think there's definitely a difference between somebody being intentionally mean,
Mhm.
or when kids are just being kids and they're being silly with each other, right? And they roast each
Yeah.
other. And I think it's important for them to have thick skin.
Mhm.
And the only people that are gonna, teach you that is your parents
Yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, because life is so difficult and people are not always nice. And yeah, you need to learn how to, like, shrug that off and keep going.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, that's another option. Roast your kids.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Teach them how to come back with quick comebacks. I remember, which is so funny. I remember in middle school there was this I think it was a book fair book, and it was 101 quick comebacks. Such a nerd, and I remember I used to love that book. Like it was like super cute, and like it had nothing to do with like bullying or whatever, but it had like so many quick comebacks. I wish I could like find that book and like buy it for each one of my kids, and I'm sure they wouldn't read it, and it's super silly and nerdy. But yeah, I think it's important for them to be able to defend themselves.
Yeah.
All right, man. So this has been such an important conversation. If there's one thing that I hope that you guys will take away from this is that bullying is not just a school problem, it's also a home problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an everybody problem. And I think we really need to learn how to work together so that we can fix this problem.
Yes. So if you're a parent, check in with your kids. If
Yeah.
you don't do it every day, do it at least every other day. Um, Communicate with your kids. If you're an educator, be proactive. If you see kids being silly in the classroom, and even if it's not bullying,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, nip it in the bud and don't give them a chance to escalate. And if you're a student listening, be kind because you never know what someone else is going through.
Yeah. And don't forget to follow us on social media. If you like this episode, please share it, tag us, and keep the conversation going. We want to hear your stories and thoughts about bullying.
Yes, so you can find us pretty much on every social media platform. We are on Instagram, just search for Hermanas Unfiltered Podcast. On TikTok, search for the Hermanas Unfiltered Podcast. And don't forget about YouTube, search for Hermanas Unfiltered Podcast. So until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and stay unfiltered.
Bye.
Bye.